Hello everyone, and welcome back to Season 51, War number 1 of the War Season. And today, we have a war where we're bringing Luke Cage, Valkyrie, and White Tiger. However, this defense that we're facing is going to be mostly all rank 3s. So my rotations will be just a little different when I'm using a 6-star versus a 7-star. So like this Nova, he was 660. And so with that, I'm like, okay, the Fury isn't going to be as potent, so when I take damage into block, it's not going to be like as bad as it would be as opposed to the Sig 200. However, it still hits kind of hard. Here I decided to slow down my combos for the auto block, which is honestly kind of tricky because with the AI now, he could have parried me. But my goal here is to build up the relic charges from the cap relic and do extra burst damage. That's the numbers you're seeing there. And then from there, use that to charge my hits from block into Nova. So that's where, again, the burst comes from. And so once I get the concussion on Nova, it's really just going into the rest of Luke's rotation, which is SP2 and then SP1 spam. Even if the SP1 did not crit at the end, I still had my my indestructible passive from Luke's Sig ability. And so with this next fight, I plan to abuse that Sig ability with Wiccan. Ideally with Wiccan, if you're using someone with physical hits, you can just bait out the SP1. However, if you're doing energy damage like Torchwood with Nova, you want to bait out the SP2. Only reason is because Nova will regen. Actually, come think of it, Torch would work when it comes to baiting out the SP1, just because he reverses the healing. But again, that's if you have a champ that does energy damage and can reverse healing, and Torch is, I guess, a very specific case. But here, since the SP3 from Wiccan doesn't do any stuns or any DOT damage, I can just go back in and let the Indestructible carry me into the last couple parts of the rotation, and then we finish off Wiccan easily. His health pool is incredibly small, so it's not a big deal. Now we're going from Path 2, Section 1 to Path 9, Section 2. And here we have a Wong on Hazard. I max out Petrify as well as Pacify. Petrify mainly to decrease the ability accuracy of debuffs being applied to me, like the Shock, because Luke is bleed immune. But if you look at this fight, that Shock debuff is the only debuff that is going to be placed on me. The AI was being kind of passive, but I know as soon as I get my concussions up, then the fight is completely locked down and not a single debuff will be applied to me. Right there, I missed my parry, but the White Tiger synergy gives me increased perfect block chance and block proficiency to tank the SP2 on this SP2 Axis node. And so with that, it's really just rinse and repeat. The idea for this fight when using Luke against Hazard, specifically like the bleed and shock path in Section 2, is to really just keep those concussions up. That way, the debuffs aren't applied to me. Now you see there, the White Tiger synergy is honestly really nice, just because I can minimize the health loss, and on top of that, being able to at least finish the fight in a, I guess you could say, somewhat safe manner. But here, we're just finishing on the fight with the SP1 stun lock, and then it is over. Now, the next fight, I'll talk about White Brown and White Tiger later, but the next fight is going to be a normal Valkyrie fight, but with the AI, I decided to take a different approach. I decided to, okay, I'm just going to parry, not dash back immediately, because I find when I dash back immediately to hit into block with Valkyrie, the AI is a lot more aggressive, and with Spirehand, I want to win the spacing battle. So I want to let him make that adjustment before I make my move. That way I can react instead of having Spirehand being the essentially the main cause of me losing spacing. Now from here, I split the fight just because it's going to be a long and grueling fight. The only thing to watch out for this fight really is when to launch your SP2. Because the more, I guess you can say Spire Sense, yeah, it's Spire Sense. The more Spire Sense that Spider-Ham has, on himself increases his damage reduction. That's why you see just my SP2 not doing as much initially, because of that spider nonsense. And that's every second that I'm above a bar of power, it increases in nonsense. And so I want to make the most out of it after the SP2. That's why you see me doing literally so much more damage with the SP1 once the spider nonsense goes from 10 to 0. And that's all you need to know. Now, this war was the very first war. Lucky me, I'm taking a Serpent, rank 3, and I thought I had the right game plan going into this fight, but if I played it a little differently, it would have been fine. The beginning goes simple. Okay, I'm gonna launch my SP1, get the power steal, and then from there let his power gain feed me to above a bar of power, and then from that point make sure I keep his cold charges low. If he has too many cold charges, that's when he starts hitting into your block. Now, White Tiger is a good option. In hindsight, with the 6-star Ascended, I should have went for just SP1s, because the SP2 would just feed him too much power, and I want to play as safe as possible. If I go to a different special beside the SP1, it would be SP1 to SP3. That way I gain the extra Fury. Here, I shouldn't have went for the SP2. I should have went for Relic, Heavy, then SP3. The reason I decided to go to SP3 is because I have a special 3 defense boost, but I didn't realize I would lose that much health. Honestly, the 7-star would have done better, but again, like I said, the rotation that I was doing was not conducive to success here. I make multiple mistakes, but hey, we live and learn. It's the first war, and we're gonna recover smoothly. Here, I should have backed off, and you'll see why. After I launch the SP2, I am in a good position. But for some reason, I think it was smart. You know what? I'm just gonna go for it. But like I said, hindsight is 20/20. I shouldn't have went for it. I had another chance too here. I should have just let him throw the SP2 because his cold charges were at 4. And so that means like I could have taken that damage into block, because Serpent's damage when awakened scales how far you are into the corner. And it wouldn't have hit that hard, but again, I panicked, I double launched the SP2, and I lost an attack bonus. But again, we live and learn from that, and there's some things, a lot of things, that I could and will do better moving forward. Here we just finished it off because it's just a regular Serpent fight with like none of his pre-fight charges. And the pre-fight charges are what scale his healing once he goes into the death immunity. That won't be our last fight. Our last fight is going to be a Sasquatch on missing in action, you know, vigilance, node, power, efficiency, whatever. We're gonna use Luke here. Since it's a rank 3, I'm gonna be doing just the long rotation. I did speed up the fight, mostly because of how long it is, and just because the way that Luke works with his SP3 rotation, I'm just gonna have to deal with the vigilance and missing in action. But I don't get to do the SP3 rotation like in most fights, just because the game right now is very Battlegrounds focused, and so most of the time you'll see me do like SP2 SP2 or SP2 SP1. But here I'm gonna go SP3 then SP2, because Luke's damage scales with the amount of unique debuffs placed on the opponent. If I were to run Resonate, it would honestly go faster. But again, I like to look at it as like, this one war is just one fight in the course of like a very long season. So I want to be able to save my resources. That includes units as well as mastery switches a lot. And that doesn't just go for like my fights, that goes for my battle group as well. What I want to try to aim for as far as like a range of fights my BG takes, doesn't matter who it is, I want them to take 4 to 6 fights. That's like the aim. I try not to give someone more than 3 minis, like even like 2 minis and a boss, because again, over the course of the season, I want them to save their resources That way, when we get to the end of the season, it's not like, oh, I can't boost for this fight because I don't have any resources because you gave me so-and-so. I don't want that to be an excuse. And from this point, just being able to say, like, okay, even though this is one war, we want to make sure we're set up for success for just the rest of the season. That fight goes incredibly well, but unfortunately we do end up losing this war by 10 deaths. There are a lot of factors that went into those extra 10, and just we have to be better with our planning as well as our execution.